Thank you all for joining me on this historic November 6th, 2024. As I think many of you are also suffering of lack of sleep, we ended up going to sleep around 3 in the morning and woke up at 7, so about 4 hours of sleep. And as I went to bed with my wife, I went to each of my children and told them Trump won, and they sort of just, groggily woke up and just gave me a hug and were happy and went back to bed. Make sure that your children always are filled with good ideas over bad ones. At least teach them how to think, and hopefully they will converge on good ideas. So first, congratulations to Donald Trump, to J.D. Vance, to the United States, but more importantly to the world, and even more importantly to truth and freedom. Some of you know that in chapter 1 of the Parasitic Mind, I talk about the two most fundamental ideals that shape my life are truth and freedom, and certainly the win of Donald Trump yesterday is congruent with those pursuits. So some of you may wonder, of course, but you're Canadian. Why do you care so much? Why are you vested? Because I care about ideas, right? I care about the veracity of ideas. So you wouldn't tell me, hey, don't weigh in on the Soviet Union's communism because you're Canadian and what's happening in the Soviet Union doesn't matter. Well, no, because the communism eventually escapes, so to speak. That parasitic idea escapes from the Soviet Union, and then it infiltrates around the world, and it creates an iron curtain, and Cuba becomes communist, and many other countries tried communism and socialism. So my investment, both cognitively and emotionally and existentially, in yesterday's outcome is completely irrelevant in terms of what my citizenship is, right? It's a win for all of the ideas that the United States was built on. It's a rejection of diversity, inclusion, equity. It's a celebration of meritocracy. It's a rejection of women can have 9-inch penises. It's a rejection of having 900 women, biological women, lose medals for the hard work that they put because a man decided that he's now a woman. And one party said, yes, we will defend the right of that man to go into women's prisons and rape them, to go into bathrooms, to go with your daughter and mine into the locker room. No, we don't want that. It's a rejection of settled science. Science is never settled. It is always provisional. If tomorrow there is incontrovertible evidence that the theory of evolution is wrong, then we have to accept that and find a better theory. It won't happen, but you have to be open to that if you are a scientist. Many theories that we thought were right 300 years ago, we no longer think is right. Which party defended settled science? Which party thought that it was okay to trample people's First Amendment in the pursuit of a greater goal? Which party was against, or more so against, the Second Amendment? Which party thought that it was a good idea to have a czar of misinformation and disinformation, and on, all of the things that I talk about, right? Which party thinks that the United States is irrevocably damaged? There is no such thing as American exceptionalism. Which party looked at most Americans as degenerates, deplorables, idiots, imbeciles, rubes, plebs, the great unwashed, garbage? It turns out that people don't like to be treated this way. By the way, if you think that the way the Democrat establishment was speaking with arrogance towards, a large swath of the American population, you should see the ecosystem that I inhabit in academia. Just the the level of arrogance that academics exhibit towards, all of the deplorables makes you ashamed to be an academic. Of course, this doesn't mean that I don't believe in academia. Academia is the most noble of pursuits. To be a in Arabic you say faylasuf, right? When you get a doctor of philosophy, right? You're a faylasuf in Arabic. You're a philosopher. You're a lover of knowledge. There's nothing more noble than to be an academic, as long as you are a true pursuer of knowledge, unencumbered by your identity, unencumbered by political bias, unencumbered by elitist arrogance, right? Think about Socrates walking through the market, willing to interact with everyone. One of the reasons why my voice and my message resonates is because I don't look down on people. And it was actually really beautiful. I just had recently a chat with Rob Schneider, who came on my show. It's actually the pinned chat on my YouTube channel. You can go watch it. And Rob said something that was very, very touching to me. And he said, many of us follow you because yes, you're a professor and you've got all this training and all those titles and so on. But when someone hears you speak, they don't feel like you're talking down to them, that you think they're nobodies. And I don't. And I as I've repeatedly said, I take much greater pride in receiving emails from the trucker and the corrections officer and the soldier who says, "Hey, I'm sitting in my at camp so and so, and I'm listening to your lecture on evolutionary psychology. Oh, I just watched your chat on Joe Rogan, and I decided to go back to university and study behavioral science because of you." That touches me. Now, of course, it's always nice when academics also say nice things about you, but it's the ability to be able to have as much of positive influence on as many people as possible without, looking down on them, that makes my job so rewarding. Okay. Now, certainly the Democrats didn't do that, right? They doubled down. You're all rubes. They sought Lady Gaga and Beyonce and the anointed ones. Because Beyonce has sang a few songs and hence made billions of dollars, she's better than you. She will tell you what you're supposed to do. You didn't get that. Donald Trump is a billionaire, but the reason why he resonates with people is because he touches the working class. They see themselves in him, which now brings me to an important point. I mean, I have many, many things I want to talk about, so thank you for all those who will stay throughout. I'm only bound by the fact that I'll be appearing on Will Kane's show, a bit past noon, so I'll try to cover all the points that I have to do. But if I end up going till about noon, I'll have to leave. All right, the first thing I wanted to talk about is a really important analogy. Well, not analogy, a comparison, an apt comparison between Lionel Messi and Donald Trump. And I hope, even if you're not a soccer fan, I hope that you'll still listen to the point I'm trying to make here. Lionel Messi, I'm old enough. I actually, just a couple of weeks ago, I turned 60. I still can't believe that I'm 60 years old. I feel I'm 12. Just 12 years old with a beard and a good vocabulary. But in any case, I'm old enough to have seen all of the greatest players of all time. And as I've said, the minute that I saw this guy play many, many years ago, he is better than the next 5 best players combined. He is a dream. But beyond being a dream as a player, it's his personality, right? And I've been fortunate enough to get to know the owner of Inter Miami, where Messi plays. He reached out to me a while ago, and I ended up going down to Miami to hang out with the guys and so on. And Messi is just, he really is a otherworldly role model. His humility, when he has certainly every reason to have a chip on his shoulder. His humility is unbelievable. Now, I'm not going to try to argue that Donald Trump is as humble as Lionel Messi. Hardly that, but hopefully you'll appreciate the comparison. Lionel Messi has every imaginable record you could think of. He's the most decorated soccer player by far, and on and on. I mean, every imaginable accolade. But regrettably, until 2016, he hadn't won a international title with Argentina. So all the haters said he's a fraud, he's a charlatan, he only can do it for his club team, which of course was untrue in that it's a whole team that has to win. And so, for example, in the 2014 World Cup final, they lost 1-0 in overtime. Had the goal scorer Higuain scored a few easy chances, then he would have won the World Cup in 2014. Then he lost the Copa final in 2015. Then he lost the Copa final again in 2016. And I think he had also lost an earlier Copa final when he was a much younger player. So he had lost, I think, 4 international finals, and he was getting so much abuse. Imagine a player of his stature getting insulted nonstop by his own people, telling him, "You'll never be like Maradona, you're useless, you're a fraud," and so on. He quit the national team in 2016. He quit. He said, "I've had enough. I tried my best." He quit. And then luckily, he was convinced to return, came back to the national team. In 2021, he ended up winning the Copa America with Argentina. Then he won the Finalissima against Italy. That's the winner of South America, Copa America versus Europe. So that was his second title. In 2022, when he was playing in his, I think, 5th World Cup, they lost the first game to Saudi Arabia. But then guess what? Argentina won the World Cup, and then he just won this summer the Copa America again. So he had retired from the national team, and had he not have the stick-to-itness, the resilience, the honey badger attitude that he ended up exhibiting, he wouldn't have won the World Cup, he wouldn't have won 2 Copa Americas, he wouldn't have won the Finalissima. So irrespective of how many things you threw at him, he ended up coming out on top. And when the World Cup final was happening in 2022, I think it was the day that I was the most nervous in my life. Now, you might say, who cares? I mean, you're not Argentinian. And I explained on Joe Rogan's show, and I remember that clip went viral. I met many people who said, "Oh, you're the Lionel Messi guy from Joe Rogan." I explained that the reason why I was so vested in Messi winning because it was the ultimate test for cosmic justice. It basically was the cosmos saying that if this beautiful, out of this world artist does not win the World Cup, the world is not just. Because now, of course, everybody says, yes, it is absolutely the case. He's the greatest, the incontestable greatest player of all time. Which, of course, would have still been the case even if he didn't win the World Cup. But now no one could hold anything against him. And he's won it. He's done it. And so the rest of us can wake up every morning and say, hey, there is cosmic justice in the world. There is still hope for me. Things will work out for me. The governments can steal all of my book royalties, even though all my money is made in the US. Quebec and Canada can steal everything from me. But it will work out. There will be cosmic justice. I will be rewarded. And all of you can probably have similar stories where you say, you know what, things are going rough for me. There's a lot of injustice, but I'd like to think that it will work out. And so Messi winning the World Cup represented that. So now let's now, I think you know where I'm going with this, with Donald Trump. When Donald Trump came to walk down that elevator in, I think, 2015, everybody laughed. Oh, yeah, the idiot. This guy, this television reality show star. This brash, non-stately guy. Sure, bring him on. And then he beat all the odds and then became the nominee. And then if you remember the New York Times needle that says how likely you're to win until, pretty late in the game, 99% probability that Hillary Clinton was going to win. If you remember, a few days prior to the actual election 2016, she put out a tweet which she hasn't taken down since. I trolled her a few days ago. Happy birthday to the next president of the United States. She's referring to herself. Talk about malignant narcissist. It was a photo of her as a young kid, and happy birthday to myself. Okay, fair enough. Well, he won. And then they threw everything at him. He did very well. Great economy, great, everything. Abraham Accords, many, many, many wonderful things. I won't, litigate, the case again. And then, of course, COVID happened. And then 2020 happened, and he lost. When it was time for him to come back, boy, you have never seen someone be as targeted as this guy. Right? Again, please understand, Donald Trump represents an archetype. It's me speaking about Donald Trump. And not that I need to say this. I don't have to justify why I like him or don't like him, right? But he represents an idea. If I say in the parasitic mind, activate your inner honey badger, which, by the way, many, many millions of people yesterday decided to do that when they waited in line to vote for Donald Trump. Their voice mattered. Remember, I always said, don't write to me and say, oh, but I'm not Joe Rogan. I don't have the size of his platform. How can I affect change? Oh, I'm not some fancy professor that people listen to. And I always write back and say, no. Everybody has to do their part within their sphere of influence. It might be that you interrupt your professor politely to ask them, what do you mean when men too can menstruate? Can you explain that to me biologically? What do you mean by that, professor? It could be you have a chat with your friend at the pub. There's endless number of ways by which your voice matters. And yesterday, certainly people hated the call to activate their inner honey badger. Well, who could represent a honey badger more than Donald Trump? Forget about whether you like him or don't like him. He is order of magnitude more resilient than anything you could imagine in an ancient Greek tragedy. It's astounding. The entire apparatus of the U.S. government and intelligentsia was thrown at him. 99% of academics were after him. How are they after him? By parasitizing their students into voting against Orange Himmler. Journalists were against him. You've seen the stats on how many positive stories versus negative stories are told about him. All day long, it's state propaganda against him. Then there was lawfare against him. Endless number of cases, right? This indictment and that indictment. And this one said that he raped me 40 years ago, but I don't have proof. And this one says I'm levying a $500 million judgment against you, and 34 felony convictions, and so on and so forth, violating every conceivable ethical, moral, legal tenet. And I'm not going to relitigate all this stuff. He still, he would go in the morning and freeze in the courtroom, and then at night he would go campaign. His energy is unimaginable, right? And this is in comparison to when everybody on the Democrat side would tell us Donald Trump can run faster than Usain Bolt. Not Donald Trump. Joe Biden can run faster than Usain Bolt today. He has more cognitive acuity than Darwin and Newton combined. He puts to shame 30-year-olds, even though he couldn't finish a sentence, and he didn't know whether the difference between a toaster and his wife. But that's what existential chutzpah is. That's what the term today would be gaslighting, right? That's what the Soviet dissidents told us would happen with the brainwashing in the Soviet Union. That's why George Orwell is who he is. Because the playbook of how to brainwash a peoples is not something that the Democrats discovered today. It is part and parcel of human history. What is unique today are the specific parasitic ideas that I discuss in the parasitic mind. But the capacity for the human mind to be parasitized, to be brainwashed, is just a universal and never-ending feature of the architecture of the human mind. And so here comes Donald Trump. You throw at him everything. You impeach him many times, and he comes out on top yesterday. Not only he comes out on top, I don't know if all the results have yet come in. He's gotten pretty much all of the swing states. He's probably going to get over 300 electoral votes. I think he's won the popular vote. He's gotten the majority in the Senate and likely will get the majority in the House of Representatives. So every conceivable victory that you could imagine he's gotten when every single humanly thing was thrown at him. Oh, I forgot. Oh yeah, 2 assassination attempts. One of which, had he not moved his head, would have blown his brains to bits. And it hit his face, it hit his ear. And then the next day he's going on. And of course the iconic fight, fight, fight. So if you're writing a camp song for future children to be motivated by a superhero, you wouldn't be able to generate a story like Donald Trump. Now, the difference between Donald Trump and Lionel Messi is that Lionel Messi is very understated. He's unbelievably humble. You ask him who's the greatest soccer player of all time, he'll never mention it's him. Donald Trump is less so, right? He will tell you, I'm number one, I've got the biggest penis and so on. But guess what? You probably need to have a bit of that to be able to succeed in the way that he's proven to be successful. Sorry if there's background noise. Some folks are doing some let me see if I can close the door. Are doing some renovations in the background. One sec, I'll close the door. All right. So, if for no other reason than the world is a scary place that requires tough leaders, then there would have never been more evidence that anyone could provide that suggests that in Donald Trump you've got the ultimate fighter. By the way, I want to read for you a quote from Seneca. Seneca, the Stoic. So bear with me as I read it. This is from chapter 7 of my last book on happiness. The chapter is titled On Persistence and the Anti-Fragility of Failure. This is on page 133. So this is Seneca. No tree which the wind does not often blow against is firm and strong, for it is stiffened by the very act of being shaken, and plants its roots more securely. Those which grow in a sheltered valley are brittle, and so it is to the advantage of good men, and causes them to be undismayed, that they should live much amidst alarms, and learn to bear with patience what is not evil, save to him who endures it ill. So, of course, a lot of fancy prose there, but it simply means that trees that have been exposed, for example, to strong wind stressors are much more likely to have deep roots, are much more likely to withstand any natural stressors because they have faced stressors. It's the exact same idea that I explain in the parasitic mind about when you create echo chambers, whether it be political echo chambers, belief echo chambers, academic echo chambers, you are doing your brain a huge disservice because the brain expects to be challenged by opposing views. Just like your immune system, for it to operate maximally, needs to be exposed to stressors, right? That's why kids who have been exposed to allergens, right, who've been exposed to pet dander, to farm allergens, are less likely to eventually suffer from asthma and other autoimmune disorders, because the immune system, for it to function maximally, needs that. Okay, and so The same thing happens when you're creating a sterile echo chamber where you're not exposed to opposing ideas. Your brain doesn't learn how to engage in critical thinking. And there's a neuropsychiatrist who had drawn that parallel between evolutionary medicine and these sterile echo chambers. I cite them in The Parasitic Mind. Well, that's what Seneca is saying over 2,000 years ago. In order for the tree to withstand these stressors, it needs to have grown up in an environment of stressors. If it didn't, it'll be very brittle and it will split. It will be blown by the wind. Who can you imagine is more anti-fragile than Donald Trump? Who do you want to go and deal with all of the nasty people around the world? By the way, I don't know if this was true or not. I saw that the Houthis, the maniacs in Yemen, have decided that they've ceased hostility in the sea lanes and against Israel. Boy, it turns out that his honey badger abilities were very quick to work if this story about the Houthis is right? Newton talked about for every force there is a reaction, right? Cause, right? Or more generally, the idea that, for every cause there is an effect, right? We don't live in a world where there are no links between variable A and the downstream consequences of variable B. If you ignore causality at your perils, right? Well, Donald Trump winning means that the downstream effects is many, many nasty people in the prison backyard, so to speak, are going to be afraid because people don't respond to suicidal empathy. Oh, keep hitting me, keep insulting me, keep saying that my daughter is a transphobe because she doesn't want to share her locker room with a 6'3" woman with a 9-inch penis, and there'll be consequences to that. So Trump's victory is really a celebration of the honey badger mindset. And for all of you who have children, you could look to Donald Trump and say, hey, when you grow up, be as tough as this guy. Whether you like him or not, you cannot deny that. So that's that. Does this mean that the battle is over? Not even close. Donald Trump is a doorstop, right? He will improve illegal immigration. But it takes much more than improving illegal immigration or reducing illegal immigration. You need to deport all those who are here illegally. You need to not tolerate any ideologies, including religions, that cloak themselves in the robe of religion, but that are perfectly antithetical to American and Western values. In other words, it's not enough to come in and say, I'm going to put a stop. It's basically like saying, I'm going to recognize that I'm 200 pounds overweight, and starting tomorrow, I will no longer put on any more weight. No. I need to reverse the fact that I'm 200 pounds overweight. I need to lose 200 pounds if I wish to increase my chances of having a long life. It's not just about stopping my weight gain. So it's not only about, at the margins reducing illegal immigration. It's deporting people. It's saying if you commit a heinous crime, you won't get 67 chances. We will throw the book at you because people have the inherent intrinsic right to live free of being preyed upon all day, because one party thinks from a suicidal empathy perspective that the most laudable virtue that you could have is to recognize that criminals are just humans too who've been wronged by the system. And what's the point of penalizing them by throwing the book at them when if you only give them ceramics classes, they will stop doing what they're doing? That's this idea is exactly the point of my next book, Suicidal Empathy, which, by the way, it turns out that yesterday I have some big news to share regarding the book Suicidal Empathy. I won't share it yet, but it so happened that it was on the day that the election happened. Maybe that's a positive omen, so to speak. So the battle is not won. Yes, we can celebrate that the right outcome came out yesterday if you believe in freedom and truth and the American ideals and American exceptionalism. But the battle continues. It took between 50 to 100 years for all of the parasitic ideas that I discuss in Parasitic Mind to have flourished everywhere, right? Some ideas, cultural relativism, were started by Franz Boas, the Columbia University anthropologist, nearly 100 years ago. Some ideas, the granddaddy of all idea pathogens, which is postmodernism, really took hold, 40, 50 years ago. The Michel Foucault and the Jacques Derrida and the Jacques Lacan and all the other French postmodernist bullshitters. This is the timeline is around the 60s where this really took off. You can point to the Frankfurt School earlier as also having provided the quote epistemological framework for all this bullshit to flourish, first within academia, and then it breaks out of academia and it becomes endemic everywhere, right? And so it's going to take a while to win, to remove all of the cancer cells, right? For example, when you have prostatitis, which is a bacterial infection of the prostate, one of the reasons why it recurs, if you're wondering how I know this, it's because one of our Belgian shepherds, Amar in Arabic means moon. It also could be used as an adjective for great beauty. Amar, our first Belgian shepherd, he was a Gronendal. Gronendal is one of the four. There are four types of Belgian shepherds. There's the Gronendal, the Tervuren, the Malinois, and the Lacanois. So we had a Tervuren and a Gronendal. Those are actually even more impressive than the Malinois because they've got long hair. So they look like massive, majestic, aristocratic beasts. I mean, I tell you, you weren't going to come after me or burglarize our house with these guys around. I mean, they are insanely protective and bonded to their family. It's the most beautiful thing you can imagine. In any case, Amar started to develop prostatitis when he was about 2 years old. And we'd give him these very powerful antibiotics, but the vet and the veterinary surgeon explained to us that the problem with the prostate is that even when you give the antibiotics, if it doesn't kill, because some of the bacteria can hide in the prostate and the nooks and crannies of the prostate, then there's I'm explaining this, the vet that wasn't an evolutionist, there's a artificial form of natural selection, if you'd like, whereby the bacteria that survives is the one that is the strongest, and then when prostatitis recurs and flares up again, you have a problem. And so it becomes very, very difficult to treat prostatitis. At least it was in our Belgian Shepherd. Well, so you see the analogy. If you don't eradicate all of these dreadful parasitic ideas, they're going to come back. So, okay, Trump now wins and hopefully he does some great things. But then if the next person that comes is a Democrat who doubles down on all of these bad ideas, well, we're back to square one. So there has to be an ideological shift in the landscape so that we look back and say, in what world did it make sense for a male to beat the shit out of women in a boxing ring and then win the gold medal? Oh, oops, we now know that he was a male with testicles and XY chromosomes. I'm referring to the Algerian boxer, and he had which is a medical condition, a micropenis. By the way, John Money, who is the father of gender ideology, as a clinical psychologist at Johns Hopkins University, I talk about him in my first ever book, in my 2007 academic book titled The Evolutionary Basis of Consumption, used to say, hey, if your little boy has a micropenis, and micropenis is a medical condition, right? It's not, you don't have a 9-inch penis. It's if you have such underdeveloped secondary male characteristics, including the size of your penis, then guess what? Let's just castrate the little boy, put a dress on him, call him Linda, and it's all good. She'll grow up to be a girl. That was the starting point of all this nonsense. I warned you about this in 2007. Yes, go back, read my book, my 2007 book. It's a rather technical scientific book, but I've assigned it to my undergrad, so believe me, you can read it if you decide to. So the bottom line is, if these bad ideas are not eradicated into the dustbin of history, then they'll come back stronger than ever. So yes, celebrate Donald Trump's victory, but continue. This is why I woke up today with even greater alacrity and greater focus to finish suicidal empathy. It wasn't, oh, okay, Kamala lost, therefore I don't have to rush to finish suicidal empathy. Because all of the emotional and cognitive irrationality that I've been warning against still exists. It's just hiding in the proverbial prostate. Okay? So now, let me take a minute or two to talk about Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. I mean, there are many other people that I could mention, but of course, many of you know that I've gotten to know Elon quite well. He's a big champion of my work. And Joe Rogan I've known for many years. I've been on his show 10 times. Look at these guys. These are guys who historically would have been viewed as people of the left. What makes them the extraordinary people that they are? Well, many things make them extraordinary. But one is actually the thing that I said is the most difficult for human beings to do. Do you remember what that is? Do you remember when I was asked, what is the singular phenomenon of human nature, of human behavior, Professor, that has most surprised you in your 30 plus years as a behavioral scientist and professor and so on? And I paused and I said, the inability of people to change their mind irrespective of the amount of evidence that you throw at them. Well, guess what? Elon Musk and Joe Rogan are clear outliers because they broke through that bias. They were of the left. And then they said, hey, I'm going all in for Donald Trump. Now, stop for a second and think. And I don't mean here to be, invoking an argument from authority. But if Elon Musk and if Douglas Murray and if Neil Ferguson, the historian, and if Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and if Gsad, and if Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and Ackman and David Sachs all went for Trump, but Lady Gaga went for Kamala Harris, and Beyonce and Barbara Streisand and the ladies from The View, does that not cause you take a second and pause and say, well, one of the two groups is clearly wrong? You know what? When you're unsure, don't bet against Elon. I've told you this before, I think. I haven't really mentioned it too much publicly, but at least I think in a previous X Spaces, I said that Elon and I sat at his house for 4 hours having a chat. He's an extraordinary human being. I mean, truly. In every possible way. Warm, humble, intense, personal, intimate. I put out a Saad Truth clip as soon as he bought, and you can go and watch it from 2 years ago. When he bought Twitter, what was then Twitter, I said, of all things that Elon has done or will ever do, nothing will come remotely as close in terms of historical significance than him buying X. And I don't mean to be the guy in the back saying, I told you so. Imagine if Elon had not bought X. You'd have the most idiotic, the most parasitized, the most unworthy, lobotomized, imbecile, the most undeserving person running the most important country in the world. Thank God for Elon. And Joe, of course, he's got the biggest platform in the world. he was more than happy to invite Donald Trump. And I spoke to, I communicated with one of the senior advisors of Trump, and I said, look, that's a fantastic strategy. And at the time, they were also hoping for Trump and I to have a chat on my show. And I understand that once they had gone on Joe Rogan, time was running out. And once you've gone on Joe, I'm small potatoes. I get that. But I said, look, people hate Trump because he is an aesthetic injury, as I explained, the parasitic mind, because they smell the cork of the wine bottle where they say, oh, he's disgusting, he's brash, he's vulgar. I hate him. But the reality is, if you give him a chance to interact with people in a down-to-earth manner where he doesn't suck up the oxygen in the room, I'm willing to bet that a lot of people are going to come around. And that's exactly what happened. He went on Greg Gutfeld, and guess what? He's just a cool guy. And he went on Joe Rogan, and people said, wait a second, I kind of like this guy. He's not the Nazi and Himmler and Goebbels and Goering that they told me he was. He doesn't eat babies. He's not a monster. He's actually a pretty cool guy. He's funny. He's charming. He's got charisma. Megyn Kelly, remember? She hated Trump. Look at her now. That's the hallmark of ultimate intelligence and truly epistemological humility. When you take people who had... J.D. Vance was a no-Trumper. Look at him now, right? So a very rare thing is to be able to have the epistemological humility to say, I used to believe X, and now I believe not X in light of new incoming information. And that's what science is, by the way. That's why the concept settled science should never apply. Okay, so thank you to Elon, thank you to Joe Rogan, thank you to all the folks who made this happen. In whatever small way I was able to contribute, I'm delighted to have been able to do so. I was overwhelmed. I am overwhelmed by the number of messages and emails and DMs I'm receiving from people who say, look, you've turned it for me. It was listening to you. It was reading your work. It was reading your book that did it for me. And so ideas matter, people. That's how you get Adolf Hitler on the one hand. That's how you get Lysenkoism. For those of you who don't know what Lysenkoism is, it was the theory that the laws of heredity and the laws of genetics, Mendelian genetics, because they did not conform to Marxist philosophy, the Soviet Union was going to build a food program and an agricultural science that was rooted in Lysenkoism, named after Lysenko, which I'm not going to get into the technical details, but relied on certain principles from Lamarckism, which is theory of acquired traits, which is not how genetic transmission happens. And that, because their theory of genetics had to conform to their political ideology, they ended up creating massive famine and led to the death of 20 plus million people. Ideas matter. And you always want to be fighting for good ideas. The scientific method is a good idea. There is no indigenous science. There is no Jewish science. There is no Lebanese Jewish way of doing science. There's just science. We don't give a shit about your indigenous science. We don't give a shit about your Jewish science. Science liberates us from the shackles of our personal identities. So support science. There is no settled science. There's only provisional science. There is no disinformation and misinformation. Bad ideas will be superseded by better ones in the marketplace of ideas. Those are things worth fighting for. And many people died for those ideas. And so thank God for yesterday's win. A couple of more things and I'll let you go. Thank you for all those who have stayed. By the way, I will eventually post this on my YouTube channel and on my podcast. If I may, just forgive me for engaging in a bit of administrative stuff. I don't do this enough. Maybe I should always do it. It's completely free for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and press the bell button. It helps because it helps me spread good ideas. And I'm now thinking, by the way, I haven't done it yet, that it's maybe finally time to reward those who are offering alternative platforms. And I know that the Rumble people have written to me and contacted me many times. We've held meetings. Maybe it's time to also move my operations, at least have my voice on Rumble as well. But in any case, subscribe to my podcast. It's free. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's free. Support those who are fighting in any way that you can. Go out and buy copies of my book, not because the $2 or $3 that I'll make on the royalties will change my life, but because you're supporting those who are putting everything on the line, right? And many of us have done so. Believe me, the amount of abuse that I've gotten in academia, the number of professorships that I've lost, chaired professorships that I didn't get, grants that I didn't win, and on and on and on is, I'm not going to bore you with the details now, but it matters. Luckily for me, I am currently a visiting professor and global ambassador at Northwood University, which is known as the Free Enterprise University. Check them out, by the way. They're in a beautiful town in Midland, Michigan. Hooray for Michigan. I've got 3 reasons to love Michigan now. Number 1, Barry Sanders, greatest running back of all time. I used to drop everything just to watch the Detroit Lions. Not because I like the Detroit Lions, but because Barry Sanders was outlandish. I mean, the guy wasn't human the way he moved. Second reason I love Michigan, well, they certainly carried the state for Trump yesterday. And third reason, in no particular order, is because I'm currently at a Michigan university. And I'd like to give a shout out here to Kent McDonald and his team. Kent is a fellow Canadian, by the way. You should see this. There's a bunch of Canadians in senior administration at an American university. Boy, Canadians are cool. I mean, not Justin Trudeau, but you got Jordan Peterson, you got Kent McDonald, you got this other Lebanese Jewish guy, extremely good looking, called Gsad. We must be doing something right in Canada to try to offset what Justin Trudeau's doing to Canada. But in any case, maybe this is also the tide turning in Canada. Let's see. The last thing I wanted to mention is, and I'll call it quits for today, is I've been looking at the manner by which people have been reacting to yesterday's victory of Donald Trump. And specifically, I'm going to focus on the academics. What amazes me, folks, is that many of the academics that I know are not just academics in that, they study, marine biology. Many of them, by virtue of, my own areas of research, they're likely to be professors of psychology, professors of evolutionary psychology, professors of consumer behavior, professors of decision making, professors of marketing, at least certainly behavioral marketing. And so these are people who've dedicated their lives to studying behavior, to studying psychology. And then it baffles the mind that they could be so lacking in humility and introspection. They're all walking around. I can't understand how millions of people are such degenerates. You study decision-making, asshole? You have professor, doctor before your name? That's what pisses me off, is the hubris of my colleagues. No ability to say, well, wait a second. You know what? I would be a fraud if I don't recognize that here are some compelling reasons why yesterday happened the way that it happened. No. They don't do that. They're all going hysterical on my personal Facebook page. I mean, nearly 99% of them, and by the way, many of them have now unfriended me because I'm a degenerate. I'm garbage. Thank God we didn't hire Professor Gsad at my university. He's trying to end women's rights by defending Donald Trump. So there is zero humility, zero ability to change your opinion, zero ability to introspect. It's grotesque. Now, if you had a surgeon who was going to operate on you, and let's say he suddenly was afflicted with Parkinson's, so that he could no longer, he had the Parkinsonian tremors that didn't allow him to have the manual dexterity to do surgery, that person would no longer be able to practice. Well, where is the similar analogy where you are exhibiting cues that you are lobotomized, that you are parasitized? How can we entrust you? And I'm not arguing here, oh, if anybody takes a position that is contrary to my position, then we're going to no longer allow you to teach. But again, think about what that says. You've got a university system where your kids go to it. You pay a huge amount of money under the trust that if I give you tons of money, you will train my children to think in whatever, whether it be in studying Shakespeare or as a fine arts student or a mathematics student or a business school student. We're training you how to think, to make better sense of the world, to be intellectually enriched. But then I look at all my colleagues and not one of them is saying, wait a second, I'm going to stand up on top of the mountain and tell you, I get it. I get that our arrogance, our elitism, our dogmatic intolerance led to this. And let's be better. Let's offer better ideas. No, they're all doubling down. That's why, to my earlier point, despite the fact that Donald Trump has won, the fight is only beginning, people. So don't take your eyes off the ball. Get engaged. Activate your inner honey badger. Don't give your money to your alma mater if they're still pushing craziness. Make people earn your friendship, earn your trust, earn your donor dollars. Life is about causes and effect. If a university is promulgating nonsense, if they are deplatforming people who disagree with them, then you say, guess what? You don't deserve my money. You don't deserve to have access to my beautiful children. Okay, so there you have it, folks. Thank God that yesterday went the right way. May God protect, may God or the cosmos, depending on your religious outlook, protect all free thinkers, all decent people, all capacity for human reason. May liberty and freedom continue to flourish. I will probably take a bit of a break this afternoon, but guess what? Later today or tomorrow, after maybe I take a bit of a nap, I'm back to working on suicidal empathy, trying to hopefully get you that book as soon as possible. And hopefully one day we'll look back on all of those ideas as just insanity that is in the rear view mirror. Thank you so much for all of you for turning out. And please share this with anybody that you think would benefit from hearing it. Thank you so much, folks, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers, everybody.